that history's ever created. I'm not committed to nonviolence in any way.
Man or woman who hates communism the most, that is to say, the man or woman who knows the least about communism, is the man or woman who wants to know the least about communism. That is to say, snakes are my enemies. They come to bite me, and I don't even want to know what they look like.
We're going to see about stopping, regardless of what these people think we should do. Because school is not important, and work is not important. Nothing's more important than stopping fascism, because fascism will stop us all.
Yo! Wow, that sounds good. Welcome to the Forest Pod. This is episode 6, June 10th, 2025. This is the first time recording properly, how we should have been recording since the beginning. It's your boy, Comrade Villain, here with the other boy,
Comrade Lab.
What's going on, bro?
That sound crazy.
I know, I love it. Just wait. Like, recording with the future presets and the little baby presets and shit. It makes me want to I understand why they do it now, essentially. Like with the auto-tune, I get it. It just sounds so fucking cool. It's so fun.
No doubt.
But yeah, man, what's going on in the world today besides LA being on fire? I mean, I guess NBA update. OKC tied it up the other night, so it's 1-1 right now in the NBA Finals, going back to Indiana. But OKC is still the heavy favorite. Who do you think?
I mean, I'm rooting for the Pacers.
Why? You like the yes sirs shit?
Nah, man, it's America, baby, USA.
What? Oklahoma City is not America?
I can't root for no Canadians.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Get that fucking Shea Gil-Alexander out of here. I mean, he was the MVP though.
Yeah, no doubt. No, I like Shea. He's dope.
But yeah, fuck Canada. So I guess let's go ahead and try to get right into it, save some time. Today, I'm going to be talking about JB, not Jaylen Brown. The other Brown. John Brown. What do you know about John Brown?
I know he, was an abolitionist who put some skin in the game, man. He was really about that. And
About that life.
No doubt.
Yeah, he was. And I'm going to get into why. Or at least what a lot of people think is why. And it kind of makes sense to me. But before that, this whole idea, because when you look up stuff about John Brown, even like on YouTube, a lot of the titles of the videos is like terrorist or freedom fighter. You see that little phrasing a lot. And, it's that classic quote, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Do you know what that quote is attributed to? Or who?
No.
Nobody. So I tried to find that. And I guess there's not one person. It's just like a colloquialism that came about during Cold Era times, actually. Cold War era. And it made me think about Reagan because he used the term freedom fighter for, who do you think?
The Contras?
The goddamn Contras. And it's so interesting because as the term freedom fighter and as that quote was, being circulated around in the 70s, 80s, it gained a lot of traction during debates over groups like the IRA, which, peace to the IRA, the PLO, peace to the PLO. So that's the Irish Republican Army and the Palestine Liberation Organization, both fighting off oppressive colonialism, and also various African liberation movements. I'm guessing like the ANC, which was Mandela, right? That was right. ANC, African National Congress. Yeah. But Reagan, well, right-wingers, including Reagan, would demonize all of those groups, saying those aren't freedom fighters, those are terrorists. The real freedom fighters are the Contras. And how he defined like the difference is he said one man's terrorist actually, excuse me. God, the mics are too good. In a 1986 radio address, Ronald Reagan said, quote, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter is misleading. And then he claimed, this is not part of the quote, just summarized, but he claimed true freedom fighters don't target civilians. Do you think the Contras ever targeted civilians, Brent?
Of course.
Turns out the Contras did target civilians. They routinely targeted civilians, teachers, or including teachers, doctors, and elected officials. They destroyed health clinics, schools, cooperatives, co-ops, and were even supplied by a CIA manual recommending political assassination and psychological terror tactics. So, fucking bullshit, doublespeak. Freedom fighters, the way it's used is, freedom fighters who you want to be on your side or whatever, but no, freedom fighter, someone fighting off global colonization, whatever, fighting off oppression. And the Contras were trying to instill American-backed, fake governments that supported us. So that's not really fighting off oppression. And once again, the right wing, just flips this shit. I bet that was, what's his name? Lee Atwater. That was probably his idea. The boogeyman. Definitely going to have to do a deep dive on Lee one day.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
But moving past all that, back to John Brown. He was born in the 1800s, or actually May 9th, 1800. And the main reasons that I could find as to why he was so radical in his abolitionism, which, in case you don't know, abolitionism is being opposed to slavery, specifically in America during the 1800s. But the main things were his religion, his upbringing, like from his father, and just personal experiences he had. As far as the religion, I was very interested in that because I knew a little bit about, it was the Puritans. So the Puritans are the ones that left Britain, came over here, the Pilgrims. Most of them were Puritans, a lot of them were. But they were very strict, and their strict interpretations, one of them is being against slavery because everybody is created equal under God. They had, what's it called? Universal spiritual equality. So that specifically is like, it's essentially, it's a principle that says, it emphasized that no human has moral superiority over another in God's eyes. And that ties into their more core concept belief of total depravity and predestination. So the Puritans, and specifically Calvinists, which is just like an offshoot of Puritanism, they believe in total depravity, which is this idea that everyone is just shitty or sin corrupts everything. So without divine intervention, people will be shitty. And, it's good to proselytize, I guess, but like it really doesn't matter. Like people are just evil. God is the only reason we're not. And one of the things that proves that we're evil inherently is slavery. And divine intervention from God will eventually make people realize that it's a bad thing. But most Puritans were not as radical on this as John was. They still believed in like hierarchy. They still had, some of them had slaves themselves. So it was more of like, we believe this and go to church and we talk about it. But socially, it's not really a priority. That's just part of how it is in America. It's not great, but whatever. It's part of society. So I was like, if that's how most Puritans were, why John Brown? Why did John Brown like become more radical than them? And essentially, it was his father. His father, well, besides the incidents that we're going to get into, that really shaped his viewpoint and like radicalized him, like firsthand experience stuff. His father was I guess it's a minister, and in the Puritan church or Calvinist church, and he was a moral absolutist. He taught his son that not doing something, like just watching something happen and not acting, or because a law that man created is a law, not breaking that law, because in God's eyes, that's an immoral law. Like, that's wrong. You have to do something. Like, if you know something is going on and it's fucked up, regardless of what the law says, God's law doesn't care about that shit. You need to do something about it. So his dad instilled that in him. At the same time, he was going through, life in Ohio at the time, which this is something I didn't understand really. Ohio and Michigan. Actually, all right, let me back up a little bit before I get into that. He did receive pushback from his own religious community for being so radical. But there were a group known as the Secret Six, which reminds me of like the Sinister Six from Marvel. But they funded a lot of the shit that he did later on, including the Harper's Ferry plot. And I'm going to get into who they were in a little bit. But essentially, they were the 6 people from the North that were like intellectuals, and they were like, yeah, slavery is wrong, but we don't really want to put our names out there and like risk getting in trouble or getting any kind of blowback. So we'll just fund this fucking radical John Brown. So even though most people in the Puritans or in the church, in his social circles, they were like, this dude's fucking radical. Those 6 guys, they were down. But the Harper's Ferry raid specifically, the one that they funded, he asked Frederick Douglass to be a part of it. Did you know this?
No.
And Frederick Douglass called it suicide, or said it was suicidal. Said, absolutely not. I'm not doing this. He said, quote, you're walking into a perfect steel trap and you'll never get out alive. But at the same time, Frederick Douglass was a big supporter of John Brown. And, he said a lot of shit about how, people need to be like John Brown, or we need more John Browns. But it's almost like Fred Hampton, how we were talking before this started, saying the Weather Underground and some of the shit they're doing was custoristic.
Right.
I bet he would call this custoristic. So going back to why him specifically was so radical, his father, these experiences, it seems like one experience specifically really traumatized him. When he was 12 years old, his dad asked him asked John Brown to take his cattle 100 miles from Ohio, where they lived, to Michigan to sell them. This is just like I guess a fucking thing that you just do. It's almost like a rite of passage for like a young child to take your family's cattle and go sell them, whatever, do the cattle drive. While you're doing that, you go stay with, some other people. So he was staying with the family in Michigan. In Michigan at the time, I thought, was this a free state, a slave state? Because if they have slaves there, because this is where his little interaction that really radicalized him against slavery happened. I'm like, what's going on with that? Turns out Michigan never was a slave state. Ohio was a free state.
Right.
But with Michigan, it was never, I guess slavery was never actually banned. So I guess it was open. And this kind of goes into Bleeding Kansas, and we'll talk about that.
What do you mean by
so
open? In Michigan?
Yeah, like Kansas is also another one that we're going to get into later on in John Brown's life. But these like new settled territories, whenever they were like established, people didn't know which way to go. And that was like a big fight. Like if you're going to create this state, bring it into the Union or into America, that was like the most hotly contested issue at the time, and that was going to swing national votes and shit on slavery. So with Kansas, the same kind with Michigan, they're like, we'll just let the people settle it, and then we'll let the settlers there fucking figure it out. With Kansas, that led to a bunch of fucking people from slave states trying to get there to, get a bunch of their people in there and be like, okay, it's a bunch of slave. We were pro-slave.
Right.
John Brown and some abolitionists tried to do the same thing. There was less of them. But regardless, before we get into the Kansas shit, back to the Michigan trip. Michigan was kind of the same way. It was kind of like they were trying to figure it out.
They were trying to make slavery legal in Michigan?
I know. All the way up fucking Michigan.
Yeah, I didn't realize.
I mean, Kid Rock's from Michigan, bro. They're pretty fucking racist up there.
Hold on. Kid Rock was cool until...
Was he? And like, I thought he was, like, with the boss shit.
Yeah, he was the rapper. He was cool with like Run DMC. You remember he used to be on Run's House?
No, I didn't watch fucking Run's House.
Oh, it was a good show. I loved Run's
Diggy?
House.
Is that what his son's name?
Yeah, Diggy. Yeah.
But no, I mean, Michigan, from what I understand, because they'll fly Confederate flags up in Michigan. They have like a Trump boat parade up there on Lake Michigan, or whatever lake it is up there in Michigan, where it's like a bunch of fucking Confederate flags and Trump flags. And people are like, why is a Confederate flag so popular up here in Michigan? Well, these fuckers were almost super racist. I mean, fucking Oregon was founded as a whites only state.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that.
But like, yeah, in our minds, it's
Northern City.
Bifracted or bisected north and south, It's a northern state, yeah.
A northern state, yeah. That's what I meant.
Which is, But anyways, yeah, so this is why we had a civil war. All this shit was up in the air.
Right.
But he goes to Michigan on this cattle drive. He stays with his family. I'm trying to remember the story, more details, and I have the notes here, but essentially he also, by the way, he's the one that told this story. This isn't coming from anyone else. This is like one of the defining moments in his life later on. He's like, this is why I am the way I am. Mm-hmm. I was there from John Brown's perspective. He was there. He was playing with his 12-year-old slave child from the family. The family treated John Brown great. It seemed like they treated the slaves great. I guess as good as you could treat slaves. Right. But they all had dinner. Everything was cool. At the end of the night, fucking like he was going to leave, and then he saw the master, whoever the guy in Michigan, who he had like, oh, this is a slave owner. When he got there, because he heard from his dad and all the abolitionists that slave owners are fucking awful, he met this slave owner, and he's like, this guy ain't so bad. This guy's a nice guy. He's nice to his fucking slaves. I don't know. Let me think about that. But as he was leaving, that guy grabbed an iron poker or like an iron shovel from his fireplace and just started beating the shit out of that little slave boy that he befriended. And I guess he did it because the kid didn't serve the dinner fast enough or something. But like that was never even like brought up in conversation. So John Brown was just like, what the fuck just happened here? Like I thought we were all on the same page.
Right.
So, and then in his mind, it starts turning like, oh, this is probably what happens all the fucking time. Like, this is a front.
Right.
The Southern hospitality shit. Mm-hmm. As soon as I leave behind these closed doors, this is what the fuck happens.
Right.
So that was like a pivotal moment. That super radicalized him. He also, in his teenage years, lived with a free black family. I didn't look into exactly why, but he was living with a free black family in Ohio because Ohio was a free state. And he just was like, oh, these people are fucking awesome. Pretty much.
Right.
Like, I don't understand. Like, yes, I was raised in my religion telling me that slavery is terrible. But like now I have firsthand experience of like, I just don't understand. Well, these people are just fucking people.
Right.
There's no justification for this. So he became more and more radicalized over the years. Eventually, the Bleeding Kansas thing. So there's two big things I want to talk about, and then his trial and execution. The two big things in his life that he had impact on American history. Bleeding Kansas. Bleeding Kansas was like a period of 1854 to 1859. And in 1854, the Kansas-Nebraska Act allowed settlers to vote on whether slavery would be legal in their territory. So that's what I was talking about earlier. And when I read that, the first thing I thought was like, when was this vote supposed to happen? Apparently, because Bleeding Kansas, if it lasted 5 years, it didn't happen in those 5 years. There was never a date. It was always just like, let's see, there was a first territorial legislature election in 1855. Then they had dual governments in 1855, 56. So these are like state governments. So as the state is coming into be, like we also think of it like in our minds, I think like this state became a state on this year, and it's like it was fully formed, but not really. It was just like it was declared a state, and then they were like, who's going to live there? Once you guys get there, figure your shit out. So that's what was happening. And all of this was happening in the broader context, zoom out, forest for the trees shit of slavery and right before the Civil War was about to happen.
Right.
So a lot of slave states people moved to Kansas. A lot of abolitionists, not as many, moved to Kansas. And then there was just constant back and forths. John Brown arrived in Kansas in 1855, so pretty early, and he brought 5 of his sons with him, and his sons are also down to ride. I don't know their names, I should look them up, but he brought his whole family up and with the same exact attitude as him.
Right.
I guess while he was there, something happened called the sacking of Lawrence in Lawrence, Kansas. That was in 1856. Pro-slavery forces looted and burned the whole town. It was a sheriff-led posse of about 800 men that attacked Lawrence, which, you know what? There was a Matthew McConaughey movie called The Free State of Kansas. I wonder if that's what it was about.
I never heard of that movie.
Yeah, you know, it sounds based on what I know about it, what this is about. But regardless, during that event, the pro-slavery forces burned the Free State Hotel, destroyed printing presses, looted homes and businesses. No one was killed, though. But in John Brown's mind, he's like, fuck this. This is too far. So in retaliation for that, he led a night raid and went into a house of pro-slavery settlers with his sons, took everybody outside, like all the men. I think it was like 5 men, took them outside with swords and a gun. That's how they held them, like at sword point. And then they stabbed him to death. And then after his son stabbed him, John Brown fucking shot him in the head and fucking was like, yeah, they're dead. Assassination. So that was his retaliation. It's like, oh, you want to come here, fuck with our town? All right. I've been waiting for a reason. So that really escalated shit. Also, John Brown later. So I guess that was the first point where he's like, okay, it's on. Like the war is on in his mind.
Right.
That was in May of 1856. In June of 1856, John Brown led a group that captured 23 pro-slavery fighters at the Battle of Blackjack. I don't know where that was. But then there was also the Battle of Osawatomie in August 1856, so like 2 months later, where Brown and a small force defended the town, even though it was eventually overrun by pro-slavery forces. And John Brown's son, Frederick, was killed. So he's got, he's losing family members to this shit.
Right.
All this is going on. He's in the trenches in Kansas. So that's his role in Bleeding Kansas. His name is spreading out there because people are like, oh, this John Brown guy, him and his sons went killed like 5 of our guys. Like, we ransacked the town. Yeah, but we didn't kill nobody. I guess that's how the pro-slavery forces were thinking. But anyways, he became like a underground legend, boogeyman type person. People in the South hated him. People in the North loved him. Well, abolitionists in the North loved him.
Right.
But the next major thing, or the second major thing that he was involved in, even though that was like more than one thing, Bleeding Kansas, like a 5-year period, the other major life event was Harper's Ferry. What do you know about Harper's Ferry and the raid on Harper's Ferry?
Not a lot, but that's the one that I've heard the most about.
Do you know where it is?
Nope.
Virginia. Actually, now West Virginia. I don't really know. Do you know a lot about why they split? Wasn't that like a slave thing?
Probably.
I feel like I should know more about that. I think
A lot
West
of it-
Virginia is the cool one.
Yeah, a lot of the geography has to do with slavery,
Mm-hmm.
racism.
Yeah, it's almost like it should be taught, but they're trying to not teach us what they don't teach us. Cool. So anyways, Harper's Ferry. What the whole deal with this is, Virginia, this is the DMV area. DC, Maryland, Virginia. That's like the capital of the country, the White House. A lot of shit's right there. The federal armory is there. That's where, like, I guess at the time, probably the main armory for the federal government. A lot of weapons in there. John Brown's idea was like, fuck it. This Kansas thing is popping off. We need to just kick the Civil War off. Let's start a slave uprising. Do you remember when the Haitian one was, like the dates? I'm terrible with dates.
1804.
So, okay.
That's whenever they gained their independence. It started in the early 1700s or 1790s.
I'm assuming he knew about that shit. And I was like, you know what? Slave uprising, baby. Let's go.
All right.
So the goal was hit the federal armory, take over all the weapons. That would inspire a bunch of slaves to rise up and then just start giving the fucking slaves the weapons. Snowball effect, slave revolution. Like I said, it was backed by the Secret Six, which let me pull up who they were real quick. They were the ones that essentially allowed it to happen, which is kind of like what we need now. Not like what Cory Booker thinks with the fucking, I want Elon Musk to flip sides and just give all his money to the Democrats.
Back to us, Elon.
Come back to us. All right, hold on. God damn it, where they at?
And just a side note, the movie that I think we're thinking about was Free State of Jones.
Oh, Free State of Jones. Yep.
Yeah.
Correct. Does it say what the...
It wasn't about Kansas. It was about like Mississippi, Jones County, Mississippi.
Oh, shit, really?
Civil War, yeah.
Huh, okay. All right, let's see. God damn it. Well, fuck it. I know I had them here somewhere. You know what? Their names aren't important. We ain't gonna remember them anyway.
They're important.
They were like 6 white guys who were intellectuals. I could look it up. Who gives a shit?
That's all right, yeah.
They wanted, like, we do need something like this. We need like some people behind the scenes that have power, wealth. They're like, hey, I'm too scared to do anything publicly, but I'll support, the people in the trenches. But essentially,
Some class traders.
Yeah, some class traders. Yeah. We need some fucking class traders. Where are the class traders at, man?
Yeah, no, right?
Maybe that should be like a organizing focal point priority. We need to start turning class traders.
Yeah. Fidel was a class trader.
Hell yeah.
Castro, he was a lawyer from a privileged family. Same with Che. Che was a doctor.
Hell yeah.
A doctor. From a pretty privileged family as well, I'm pretty sure.
So was fucking Bin Laden. I know I probably shouldn't throw him in there. But no, all right. Back to the Secret Six, whatever. They funded it. All he could get with their backing and their resources was 21 men. John Brown got 21 guys together, including 5 African Americans, and several of his sons. So I'm guessing 4 because one of them died. And he also had prepared a provisional constitution. So he's thinking, we're going to hit this armory. People are going to rise up immediately. We're going to start getting all the weapons. Maybe like a Russia-Ukraine scenario. This is going to be over in 2 weeks. Did Putin actually ever said that? Didn't he say some shit like that? Or is that made up?
Nah, he never said that.
Because the West fucking loves to say that Putin...
Who says that?
I've read that multiple times, that people making fun of Russia because like, oh, Putin said this was going to be over in like 2 months. And
nah, he never said that.
Yeah, I don't think he ever did either. But I'm thinking John Brown was like, this is going to be a quick thing,
Right.
Slave uprising. I have the provisional constitution. ready to go. Asked Frederick Douglass to come. He's like, nah, bro, that's a fucking dumb idea. And he went anyway.
Dang.
And on October 16th, 1859, his men actually captured the armory. They took some hostages. They cut the phone lines to delay a response, which, that's pretty much all the technology at the time. Cut the phone lines, kill the horses, I guess. No pigeons, you'd be good. But he expected a bunch of people to rise up after that, and then nobody really did. By the 18th, I hate saying this fucking dude's name, Robert E. Lee, even though he's fucking in a lot of schools still here in the South, he was the colonel of he's a colonel in the Marines. He stormed the building, and he's the one that caught Brown. 10 of Brown's men were killed. 7 of them were captured, including Brown. He was wounded but taken alive. And then they had a trial. Turns out he was the first person in U.S. history executed for treason.
I think I do remember.
That's pretty cool.
Reading that or hearing that somewhere.
That's fucking pretty anarchy.
Right.
Pretty punk rock.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then again, he had said something about it's gonna inspire people. I hate hearing this shit because like he said some things like this is gonna inspire people. People are gonna come up after our deaths, fill our shoes. We're gonna, it's gonna snowball. More and more people. Blah blah blah. Fred Hampton said the same thing. What's his name? Bobby Sands, the IRA. He said the same thing. And then they all fucking died for the cause, and then it didn't happen. Yeah. I mean, I guess the Civil War happened, but it didn't like. They say this is one of the things that sparked it was John Brown's actions, but like,
yeah, absolutely.
You know what? I'll give him that.
Yeah, we'll give him the Civil War.
We'll give him Civil War.
I mean, obviously there was a lot of other.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole Lincoln movie I haven't watched, but I'm pretty sure something was going on there. Abe was fucking tore up, man. He could not figure out what to do.
Yeah, and fun fact, I just learned this recently that because May Day just passed not too long ago.
Yes, it did.
Wait, no, May Day was it Labor Day that just passed? No, when's Labor Day?
Well, May Day definitely passed because Lee was supposed to do that.
Okay, May Day's on
show.
When is that? The 5th of May?
Yes. Well, there's 2 May Days. Are you talking about the labor movement May Day, or are you talking about the black?
No, I'm talking about the I think the Labor Day.
Okay, so that was May 5th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's what it was. But after, I guess one of the first May Days, you may have to fact check me on this.
It was May 1st, my
bad. Was after the Civil War, and it was a lot of former slaves or maybe freed slaves, or maybe people who had fought with the Union slave, who maybe were former slaves. But anyway, they sang John Brown's song to commemorate.
Yeah, I guess it was called John Brown's Body.
Yeah, John Brown's. Yeah, that's it.
Yep, and I guess what you're talking about, they reburied Union soldiers who had died in Confederate prison camp, and which gave them a proper gravesite, and then that event marked the beginning of a tradition that would later develop into Memorial Day.
Okay, Memorial Day. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
when was Memorial Day? Got all those holidays: Labor Day, Memorial Day.
I know that just passed too, because I got the day off work. That's like the best thing about Memorial Day. I mean, before I thought Memorial Day was kind of just like a bullshit U.S. Armed Forces propaganda type day. Honor our fallen soldiers. Cool, whatever. Don't criticize anything that they were killing people for. Right. But Memorial Day was May 26th.
Okay. All right. Yeah. That's what I was thinking about because I knew it was more recent than that.
But they organized on May 1st, like on May Day, and then they did the whole reburial, like all that shit is what developed into. That's why later in the month, I guess.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, the last couple of things I was gonna say, the John Brown's Body, it became a Union anthem during the Civil War. His raid polarized the nation and accelerated the path to secession and war. And see, that's the thing. Like, it's almost like his slave uprising didn't inspire people to like go to war with the South. It inspired the South to be like, fuck the Union. And they are the ones that really started the Civil War.
Yeah, that's kind of true. Yeah, that's
so. I don't know.
That's a funny way to look at it.
I think that's why they phrase it like he, was one of the sparks or one of the,
Right.
but like it wasn't the way that he thought it would happen,
Right.
which it never happens that way apparently.
Right.
I mean, I guess it did happen in Haiti. That was cool. They did, Mao, the Bolsheviks. You have successful revolutions.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, so that's the story of John Brown. He was with the shits. Man, 36 minutes. I'm killing it. You got any questions or comments?
I did want to say that this quote from Malcolm X: "If you are for me and my problems, when I say me, I mean us, our people, then you have to be willing to do as John Brown did."
Hell yeah.
Malcolm X was a fan of John Brown.
Yes, sir. And actually, it's a good thing to remember right now with all this shit that's going on in LA with all these protests, because even on the supposedly left-wing MSNBC or mainstream, quote unquote, CNN, I guess they are mainstream, whatever, those supposedly they're Democrat outlets. They're not left-wing outlets, but they keep saying, or they keep having people on that are emphasizing the importance of peaceful demonstration. And to me, it gives the other side, the way that they're doing it, it gives the other side ammunition for their argument. They're like, hey, the police is just there to try to crack down on these few people that are being violent. And that's the same thing that the Democrats and MSNBC and CNN say, oh, it's just a few people are being violent. The cops are overreacting. But like, they because they are, I guess they are mainstream media, all these huge media outlets are never going to be like pro-violence, even whenever, ICE, what they're doing is violence. I don't know how else to fucking describe it to you. A Mexican coming over here and working and paying taxes is not violence. ICE fucking yanking people out their home, putting them in fucking cages, separating them, fucking sending them to El Salvador.
Right.
The fuck? That's violence. But like, yeah, on these news outlets, just peaceful protests. We just hear there's a No King's Day protest coming up. You hear about this?
No.
This is supposed to be like a big nationwide protest. There's one going on in Pensacola. I wanted to say Graffiti Bridge area.
Right.
But I don't know, man. I wrestle so much with protests. Yes, I guess they are important. They need to exist. But man, does it make it easy for the other side to be like, look, guys, just protest here in these little areas and don't do anything. We can fucking ignore you. So what's the point of the protest?
Right. No, I agree 100%. Yeah, I mean, protests are supposed to make people uncomfortable, inconvenience people. That's the
Block
whole
traffic,
point.
at least.
Right.
But shit, man, we're not even close to John Brown. We need some John Browns. I guess we got Luigi. Free Luigi.
Dang, free Luigi, man.
All right.
He didn't do it. They got the wrong guy.
Look, man, his fucking eyebrows, you'd be able to tell. He got some bushy eyebrows. I don't think it's him. That's a different guy.
I don't think so either.
You think he's so dumb he would just pull his mask off, or I don't know. He would just have a manifesto on him.
Yeah.
This is a setup, bro.
He's been framed.
He comes from, fuck, I can't even keep it up because he's a great example. He also comes from a wealthy family.
Right, yeah. Class trader.
Glass trader. God damn, we have a couple. Let's go. All right. Let's take a quick break and then we'll move on. And we back. Back at it. Did I tell you I looked up Back at It after mathematic lyric?
Oh, no. You didn't tell me that.
It was actually Still At It after mathematic. That's why I had so hard time looking it up. It was on Still DRE. And it was written by
Corrupt.
Jay-Z. I want to say Jay-Z. Because Jay-Z wrote Snoop's verse too. And they both have publicly stated that.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
But, I mean, the Dr. Dre, I get it, but like, everybody looks at Snoop as supposed to be some fucking lyrical genius and shit.
I don't think people look at him as
I mean,
a lyrical
they call
genius.
not lyrical, but they call him a lyricist. I don't know if people fucking act like Snoop's a rapper. Like, you guys don't understand Snoop. I'm like, I don't think so.
I mean, he's a rapper.
Like a rapper? I don't know. Snoop's always been like ABC 1, 2, 3 shit.
Yeah, nah, I'll give him more credit than that.
I wouldn't think Jay-Z would write a verse for him. I wouldn't think
Yeah,
anybody
no.
would write a verse for him.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Anyways, moving on. What you got? I don't even know what you're talking about today.
Yeah, I told you what I'm talking about.
I don't
kinda.
remember.
I'm gonna talk about Iran and Russia.
Iranian. What the fuck are they called?
What?
The National Guard. Is that what their shit's called?
Yeah, the IRGC.
Yeah, that's fresh in my brain. Cause I just watched that Mountain Head movie I was telling you about on Max.
Yeah, the tech
Soon to
bros.
be back HBO Max. Yeah. And they mentioned that like one of them is like the National Guard might snipe them, and like they all knew that meant the Iranian National Guard. And I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But anyways, tell me about Iran and Russia. What's going on?
So, yeah, I'm gonna try to cover. I'm gonna start with Iran. I'm gonna touch a little bit on Russian history. I'm gonna start with Iranian history. I'm gonna try to make this quick. I'm gonna do more Iran than Russia, but
I'm gonna try not to interrupt.
if you got a good question,
I know.
ask me.
A good question. That's I don't know. Subjective. Go ahead.
All right, so basically, I want to give a little bit of the Iranian history, and basically, as always, this is kind of I like to give the context of what the Iranian history is, so we can kind of ground ourselves in that.
My bad. I'm gonna interrupt right now before you even start. Is there something in the news that happened?
Well, just the nuclear.
What do you mean?
talks.
They're having nuclear talks.
Yeah.
I don't even. Are you gonna get to this?
Yeah. That's the point.
Okay. Interesting. All right. I didn't know about this. My bad.
Yeah. There's been like people are thinking that we might go to war with Iran.
I mean, there's always been those talks, but like I didn't know Iran and Russia specifically. Are you saying they had nuclear talks?
No, we've been having nuclear
Oh,
talks
yeah.
with Iran.
Yeah. Okay. I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Still trying to get them to not make a
nukes.
weapon.
Yeah. Don't do that.
Don't even use it for energy.
But of course, I want to give a little bit of the background, the history here. So, I'm gonna start like early 20th century. In the 20s, 1921, roughly. There was someone called Reza Khan. He was actually the Shah before the Shah that most people know about.
Okay.
He was the Shah's dad.
The Shah most people know about being the one that we propped up.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But there was another Shah before
The
him,
previous Shah.
his dad. So let me rewind a little bit. So in the early 20th century, Iran was ruled by the Qajar dynasty, and foreign powers like Britain and Russia supported the Qajar dynasty. In 1921, Reza Khan staged a British-backed coup and crowned himself Reza Shah in 1925, starting the Pahlavi dynasty. And his son Mohammad Reza Pahlavi took over in 1941 during World War II.
And Iran used to be Persia, right?
Yeah.
So like these dynasties.
Yeah, these are like Persian
Dynasties. Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Let's see. So basically, what happened was there was Reza Shah, or the first Shah. He had some ties to the Nazis. So at first, the Russians and the British, I think, supported the Shah, the first Shah.
Okay.
But World War II happened, and the first Shah, had some informal ties to the Nazis. I think they were selling the Nazis oil and stuff.
Okay.
As well.
Gotcha.
Britain and Russia obviously were fighting the Nazis. So they thought that the first Shah was a little bit too friendly with Hitler and pushed him out of power.
Yeah, I mean, any friendly with Hitler is a little too friendly with Hitler, but yeah.
All right. So he got pushed out of power, and his son took over And
This is a rare instance. Britain's on the right side of history. Sorry, go ahead.
right.
Fuck the Brits.
Yeah, they're terrible. So his son took power in 1941 with the backing of Britain and Russia, and he ruled for a little bit. 1951, Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh comes to power, and I think it was democratically elected. He nationalized Iran's oil industry. This was challenging British control. This was BP. Before it was BP,
Right,
British
Petroleum.
I think it was called something else at the time.
But they backed him getting into power, and then once he was in power, he nationalized the oil industry.
No, they didn't back Mohammad Mossadegh.
No, they didn't.
Yeah, he basically ran on a more.
I see. I'm sorry. So they backed the Shah, and then this guy ran on. I'm going to nationalize the oil.
Yeah, I don't know if he ran on that specifically, but it was understood that he was more of a nationalist.
Right.
It's going to be independent.
Do what's best for their country, not what's best for Britain.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So he does nationalize Iran's oil industry, challenging British control. In response, the CIA and the MI6 orchestrated a coup called Operation Ajax in 1953.
Ajax?
Yeah, Ajax.
Okay.
And Mossadegh was ousted, and the Shah was returned to power. The son.
Gotcha.
So the Shah's rule,
Okay. I'm sorry, but that's okay. So that's my history, is that there was a democratically elected person that wanted to nationalize things, and then the CIA, but you also say an MI6 because this is Britain's more. I guess they have more skin in the game, or they care more about Iran at this point. They're the ones that.
It's their oil company.
Right. Okay, so then they helped, I don't know, spread propaganda that led to the coup to get the Shah that they had already liked, that Britain had already liked, back into power.
Yeah, I don't know the technical details of how they got him back in power, or if it was just like.
From what I understand, they just kind of fermented.
That was the
people and propaganda and propagandized them to be like, oh, this guy that wants to nationalize the oil industry for you is actually bad for you. You need to get back to the Shah. And they just kind of stoked it, let the people do their own revolution. I don't know how targeted though.
Yeah, I don't think it was.
I don't know if we had people on the ground. I mean, we have had people disseminating propaganda. I don't know if we had people on the ground doing the actual coup.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. But my understanding was it was more of influencing people who had positions of power to overthrow.
Right. Which is what they do. They come in with money.
Right.
Start handing it out. That's why you can't audit the Pentagon.
If you allow us to, privatize this oil company for our own interests, we'll let you take a little bit off the top. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's usually how it works. So basically, Shah is reinstituted as the emperor, king, whatever, monarch of Iran. He rules, very repressive ruler. He does modernize the economy some, and he does invest and industrialize some, but very repressive, and no opposition allowed. There was something called the SAVAK or SAVAK, which is his secret police.
Okay.
And it says here, U.S. aid and arms fueled resentment and laying the groundwork for the revolution. So he ruled for about 30 years until the 1979 Iranian Revolution. After years of unrest and organizing, the Shah was overthrown. Ayatollah Khomeini led the formation of the Islamic Republic.
The Ayatollah.
Yes, the Ayatollah, rejecting monarchy and Western domination. 1979, in late 1979, students stormed the U.S. embassy holding 52 American hostages. Probably remember. hearing
Yep,
about
that was a
this.
big. That was Carter administration.
Yes.
That was and then there was the big whole conspiracy. I don't know. I thought this was confirmed as fact that whenever Carter was running for a second term, this was during the Iranian hostage situation, which lasted like 40, just how many days? It lasted like 40, 60 days, something like that. And Reagan and the incoming administration, which had not been elected yet, had made a deal with Iran or whoever was holding the hostages in Iran that, hey, don't let them go until after the election because it makes Carter look weak. Because if they got released right before the election, that's like a big win for him. It's like could have been a pivotal turning point, sliding doors moment in America right there.
Absolutely, for sure.
And it's also fucking.
I mean, Carter had a lot
up.
of other problems before.
Oh,
that
for sure. He wasn't great, especially with international shit.
Well, there was the oil shock going on and inflation.
Well, stagflation, and then the oil shortage.
Yeah. So he might have lost even without that, but
That's true.
that's certainly didn't help. But yeah, Reagan's campaign negotiated with Iran to delay their release, hurting Carter in a scandal dubbed the October Surprise.
That's where because you still hear that used in colloquialism.
Always
Or used
mess
as
up
a
that word.
colloquialism anytime it's election time,
Right.
or election season, which is like I guess a fucking year now. They be like, an October surprise.
Right.
Then this might be the October surprise. Okay, so this is where it came from.
Right. And students revealed CIA documents confirming espionage from within the embassy. So, they did storm the embassy.
Right, the hostages were people that were at the embassy, the U.S. embassy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a part of that was like getting all this evidence, almost like the COINTELPRO shit.
Right.
Like it's just here's all a bunch of documents about the CIA definitely being involved here.
Right.
This is why it's not up for question. Like,
Right.
this is just
This is what it was.
this is what had happened.
Yeah. And I remember reading somewhere that they were trying to destroy all that evidence, but they got there before they could.
Yeah, I bet they had the fucking shredders running. Yeah.
Actually, I think they did actually end up destroying some of it, and they put some of it back together after it was shredded and destroyed.
That definitely happened with COINTELPRO.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember that. I remember seeing them like put pieces back together. I remember seeing. I think it was during on the Weather Underground documentary, because they go into it there. Because that's how we found out about. That's how the Weather Underground essentially all got off, because it was illegally surveilled by the FBI and the COINTEL program that no one knew about until somebody broke into that office, which I think they were tied to the Weather Underground and got all that shit. But yeah, I mean, I always think about what's his name from The Wire. Are you taking notes on a criminal?
Omar? Oh, Stringer Bell?
Stringer, yeah. I know you're not taking notes on a criminal conspiracy. Well, look, man, conspiracies need notes. That's why conspiracy theories are fucking crazy, because you have to hide all that shit if it exists.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, forgot.
But and then also just a side note, since you mentioned it, I don't have it here, but this was also part of around the Iran Contra
Yes.
time, where the Reagan administration, after it came into power, was buying weapons from the Iranians, right? To sell to give to the Contras.
So Congress said that I think it was two fronts that Congress was like, hey, you can't do these deals with Iran, and you can't fund the Contras. And Reagan was like, we're doing both. We're going to sell these weapons to Iran and take that money and give it to the Contras.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's fucking wild.
All right. So anyway, revolution happens. Ayatollah comes to power. They form the new Iran Islamic government. I also wanted to talk a little bit about this. 1980 through 1988, there was the Iran-Iraq War. Saddam Hussein, with the U.S. support, launched a devastating war in Iran. The U.S. supplied Iraq with weapons, intel, and even components for chemical weapons. those same chemical weapons that we later said they had, and was with the impetus for us invading the country. So we gave them some of the weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah. That's why we knew they were there. Fucking gave them to you.
Exactly. But yeah, so that was a 8-year war.
Because Saddam wasn't. He was also trained by the CIA, wasn't he?
I don't know if he was trained by the CIA, but he was definitely.
He definitely
like,
did. He go to
asset.
like the School of Americas or something? Do you know what that is?
I've heard of it. I'm not that familiar with
I
it though.
think maybe Bin Laden or some Taliban. It's like it's where we kind of like teach fighters around the world that are going to be, what we want to win. Essentially, here's how to do it. Because I remember like we taught Saddam or we taught Osama a lot of these things, and it was great because they were fighting against Iran with Saddam or against Russia with the Taliban or whatever. But like, yeah, they still know all that shit. And they just turn around and use it on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Backfire. Blowback.
Blowback, baby.
So yeah, brutal war. I think 1 million people die in that Iran-Iraq war.
Yeah.
Between the two countries.
And chemical weapons, you said too.
Yeah, chemical weapons were used.
That's what I remember. Not great.
Yes. After the 1979 revolution and the hostage crisis, the U.S. imposed initial sanctions on Iran, freezing nearly $12 billion in Iranian assets and cutting off diplomatic ties. Sanctions were framed as a response to the embassy takeover and Iran's state sponsorship of terrorism. Over time, they expanded to target wide swaths of Iran's economy. Bans on oil and gas exports, restrictions on banking and finance, bans on aircraft parts and dual-use technologies, and designation of the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, as a terrorist organization. Secondary sanctions penalizing...
Or are they freedom fighters? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Secondary sanctions penalizing other countries and companies that trade with Iran. These measures were aimed at weakening Iran's regional influence and later curbing their nuclear program. So, speaking of the nuclear program, we're going to fast forward a little bit to roughly around 2002, when an Iranian dissident group called the MEK, the Mujahideen-e-Khalq. I'm not sure that's how you
I
pronounce it.
heard of the Mujahideen.
Yeah, this is the Iranian Mujahideen, a little different. With ties to U.S. and Israeli intelligence, reveals Iran's secret nuclear facilities in Natanz and Arak, A-R-A-K. Not sure.
I was about to say that's funny if they have a city called Iraq.
This revelation prompts global scrutiny. So yeah, this was like a leftist group actually. Fun fact, but not a fun fact, but there were leftists that were involved in the initial 1979 revolution. One of them was this group, the MEK.
Okay.
However, after the revolution, the Ayatollah comes to power and they form a more like Islamic centered group, and these leftists were of course more secular, and they kind of marginalize them. The leftists get upset and there's like a little fight between them. Basically this group later gets kicked out of Iran more or less.
Damn.
And they actually ended up, at first they were fighting during the Iran and Iraq war. This leftist group was fighting, of course, with on the side of Iran
Against us and Western influence through Iraq.
Yes, but they were also having an internal fight with the Islamic government, and eventually they got pushed out completely. They set up shop in Iraq and started taking out or having like military operations out of Iraq into Iran. And they really fell out of favor with the Iranian public at that point, because this was still during the Iran-Iraq war. So they were kind of seen as traitors.
Gotcha.
But, at that point, I think they were kind of just really tapped by U.S. intelligence to be like a bulwark against Iranian power. So they've been working with U.S. intelligence, I think, since probably like the late 80s. I think that's my understanding anyway.
Gotcha.
But in 2002, basically they told on Iran and said, hey, and again, they're mostly not in Iran. I think they're mostly in Iraq at this time anyway. But they tell Western powers that, hey, Iran's got some nuclear activity going on. Y'all should come check this out, more or less. Under international pressure, Iran agrees to suspend enrichment temporarily and cooperates with the IAEA. However, talks collapsed by 2006 after hardliners gain political strength and Iran enrichment resumes. In 2005, the election of conservative President Ahmadinejad marks a harder line. Iran refuses to suspend enrichment, leading to the UN Security Council of sanctions. In 2006, the P5+1, which is the U.S., UK, France, Russia, China, and Germany for some reason. I don't know how Germany got after everything.
Say those other ones again.
U.S., UK, France, Russia, China, Germany.
Huh. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the whole formation of that is because was post-World War II, us fighting the Nazis, and somehow they end up like a partner in the Security Council.
Look, man, I will give Germany credit for being like, fuck Nazis. They, I mean, there's still a right-wing contingent AFD and all that shit, but like at least
they said fuck Nazis after they did the Nazi thing.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I'm saying these are the new Germans.
Nah. I'm sorry. You don't get to be on the Security Council after that.
Fuck no. Y'all let them take over.
Even though it's not like
you were the first line of defense.
A role with any
Your
power.
whole country.
They're just like a partner, but still, it's like, well, why even do that?
Why even include them? Yeah.
Right. I mean, I have a lot of problems with the formation of the UN anyway. I think there shouldn't be a Security Council at all, really.
Fuck no. I mean, it's
not very democratic. Yeah. Anyway, fast forwarding here, let's see, 2009 and 2010, there was a Stuxnet cyber attack.
I remember that.
Developed by the U.S. and Israel, secretly targets Iran's enrichment facilities, damaging centrifuges and delaying progress. 2010, 2012, despite rising tensions and sanctions, Iran publicly reaffirms Khamenei's fatwa against nuclear weapons. The decree is referenced in Iran's statements to the non-aligned movement and during nuclear discussions. So basically, I mean, just to kind of sum up these notes here is they were enriching, uranium for what they say
yellow cake
was peaceful nuclear development, right, for energy.
Because guess what, guys? It's actually a pretty good option for energy. Nuclear energy is actually a good idea. Don't be afraid of 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl. Yeah, Fukushima. Yeah, maybe don't build it on the coastline if you have tsunamis.
Yeah, don't build it on fault lines. Bad idea.
But in general, I mean, did you know, like, pretty sure all of them, U.S. submarines, they're powered by nuclear energy. That's why they're called nuclear subs.
Oh, no, I didn't realize they were
I know.
powered
I
by
always thought it was
nuclear
like, because they can shoot nukes.
Yeah, that's what I assumed.
No.
They can't do that too, though.
I mean, they can, but like they can stay down there for like months.
Right.
Self-sustaining energy because of nuclear energy.
Oh.
But anyways, and also Batman, The Dark Knight Rises, that was the whole plot of that movie. He's trying to build nuclear energy to power the city, but he can't do it because it could be so easily turned into a bomb. And you know what? Those movies are very fucking like thinly veiled right-wing propaganda and like authoritarian propaganda.
Most of them are.
Specifically the Dark Knight trilogy, which I love those fucking movies. But like,
they're good movies though.
It's justification. It's like, yeah, Iran, I get it. You want some nuclear, but you could also turn it into a bomb. And you guys are just too fucking crazy. Can't be trusted. And like, that's essentially what Batman was saying. He's like, I don't want to give this over to my board because maybe they'll be corrupted and bomb,
Right.
whatever. Bain took care of that. But
Shout out to
it's
Bain.
yeah, shout out Bain, not Bain Capital. It's just fucked up that because we're afraid of what they might do, they can't have clean nuclear energy, whatever.
Right. And of course, look, maybe they are developing it to weaponize it. We don't know. And I mean, I guess the argument is they this is one of the arguments is look, they were signatories to the NPT. I think okay, fine, but this was also under the Shah, right? So when they signed the NPT, it was under the government that we installed. You know what I mean? So
Pretty good. I mean, if you're building a narrative from the Western perspective, like, yeah, this is the type of shit. Like, yeah, they install somebody. Yeah, it doesn't work out, but guess what? While he's in there, he can sign some bullshit, and then later on, we can be like, "Look, you guys sign this. I don't know what to tell you."
right.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. It's kind of like it's just kind of a side note, but the expansion of NATO. One of the problems that the Russians had with it was that they were told, you know, while prior to the dissolution of the Soviet Union, that there would be no NATO expansion, not even 1 inch to the east.
Oops.
And one of the rebuttals from some U.S. official, I believe, was, well, we told that to the Soviet Union, not Russia. Right? So, look, found a loophole.
Yeah, that's how propaganda works, everybody.
But anyway, to sum it up, basically, they were enriching uranium. It was discovered. The MEK told on them. They said, we're doing it because we wanted to use it for our energy. There was some investigations. The IAEA looked into it, and they were like, you guys maybe are enriching a little bit more than you need.
Well, you know
that
what?
Kind of thing.
Going back to the UN thing real quick, the other main benefit of having nuclear weapons is you're on that Security Council, right? Doesn't every member of the Security Council have nuclear weapons?
Yeah, but I mean, that's not like,
I know.
that wasn't a prerequisite.
I mean,
or anything.
Israel's not supposed to, but they do.
Right.
But the whole idea is like once you have them, your fucking vote matters. If everybody in the Security Council could just veto anything, why? Well, because they got nukes. They're dangerous. We gotta respect them.
Those just were the countries that won World War II. That's why they ended up in the Security Council.
Yeah, but they're also the ones with the nukes.
Yeah, but I mean, there's other countries with nukes that are on the Security Council.
I guess, yeah, like India,
Yeah,
Pakistan. But even them, like we have to listen to it. You get like a bargaining chip in international affairs when you have nukes.
Yeah. I mean, the main reason countries would want to, pursue
like in North Korea.
North Korea is to, dissuade a country from wanting to invade them.
Yeah.
So that's the primary reason countries want to have nuclear weapons is for defense.
Yeah. Or, I mean, Israel, again, they're right there. My enemy, they got them. Why can't I have them? I should have them. Yeah.
So, Iran definitely wanted to pursue a peaceful program. And no one has ever been able to prove that they were using it to be weaponized. Most of the evidence is like they're enriching a certain amount that they necessarily don't need for, peaceful purposes for, powering their own country.
But that's just what we're saying.
That's what we're saying.
Because that's the whole point. Like, once you hit that level, if you can use it for nuclear energy, you can use it for a nuclear bomb. Like,
Pat, I want to go over the JCPOA a little bit. So in 2015, Iran and the P5+1 signed the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Iran limited uranium enrichment and allowed inspections in return for sanctions relief. Even under Obama, U.S. compliance was partial. Many financial sanctions remained, frustrating Iran and European allies. That's one thing that I learned recently was that we didn't even comply with the sanctions, or there was a lot of ambiguity around what what sanctions applied, what like businesses would be sanctioned or
I
have
wonder who
sanctions
gets to
lifted.
decide that.
They had like the sanctions that were due to like terrorist activity that were still there, and I think Iran was under the impression that all the sanctions would be lifted. So, and even again, in my notes here, I mean, even Europe was frustrated because they were like, we don't know what business we can do with Iran because you guys haven't clearly stated like what sanctions are on and off the books. So yeah, there was a lot of confusion around that. Thanks, Obama.
Thanks, Obama.
So yeah, and I'm gonna fast forward to Trump's administration here.
Let's just fast forward all the way through it.
And oh yeah, I wish. In 2018, Trump unilaterally withdrew from the JCPOA, reimposing harsh sanctions. This was known as his maximum pressure campaign. Iran gradually resumed uranium enrichment and limited IAEA inspections. European allies tried to preserve the deal, but were stymied by U.S. control over the financial system. Like Russia, later, Iran saw its reserves and international access curtailed, deepening mistrust of Western finance. In 2020, there was the assassination of Qasem Soleimani. Trump ordered a drone strike that killed General Soleimani, the head of the IRGC Quds forces, at Baghdad airport. This was a major escalation, widely viewed as an act of war under international law. And also, just a side note, Soleimani was instrumental in the defeating of ISIS. So he was organizing, help organize Iran and Syrian opposition to fighting
Gets radical Islamic
ISIS.
bullshit.
So, Trump tried to take a lot of credit for defeating ISIS, but he actually
No, he
assassinated
did it, bro.
the guy who was
Actually defeating ISIS.
exactly.
And also, wasn't this the justification for the Iranian strike, the missile strike on Israel? It was a response to this general getting killed?
No. The most recent one?
Yeah. When was this general killed?
This was 2020.
Okay.
This is the first Trump administration.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
So, I mean, you're thinking about the Hamas. They assassinated a Hamas leader, and that was in Iran.
Wasn't there an Iranian general that was killed as part of that shit? I don't know. I'll look into that. Keep going.
So yeah, there was actually 1 second.
Yeah. The Israeli assassination of senior leaders from Hezbollah, Hamas, and the IRGC, including senior IRGC generals in Damascus and Lebanon. That was part of the justification Iran gave for the October 2024
Right.
strike. Okay. I just remember there was some kind of Iranian general that was killed, and that was part of the justification. They weren't just like, you guys killed a Hamas general, we're going to get you. It was like, no, you guys touched us.
Yeah, no, they bombed the Iranian consulate in Syria.
Right. Which is Damascus, right? Damascus in Syria? Yeah.
I think so. Well, Damascus is definitely in Syria. But
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's what the consulate was at.
So, yeah, okay. So that's what I was talking about. So, again, another general from Iran that's killed by the West, and it just escalates shit. What were you looking into?
I had other notes, and I don't know what I did with them.
Oh, I hate that shit. That happened to me too. That list of John Brown guys. Actually, while you look for that, I did find that. Here it is. The members of the Secret Six. Thomas Wentworth Higginson, that's a white ass name. Unitarian minister, writer, and radical reformer. Later commanded a black Union regiment in the Civil War. Okay, that's what's up. He got
Wait,
skin
who's
in the
this?
game. These are the members of the Secret Six that funded John Brown.
Oh,
This
okay.
guy, Thomas Wentworth Higginson, eventually turned out to be about it. Samuel Gidley Howe, he was a Boston doctor. That's about all we got about him. Theodore Parker, another Unitarian theologian. Franklin B. Sanborn, Secretary of Massachusetts State Kansas Committee. What the fuck is that? George Luther Stearns, a wealthy industrialist, and Jarrett Smith, a New York philanthropist and Liberty Party politician. So, actually, he was briefly institutionalized after the Harper's Ferry raid due to the political fallout. So, yeah. So, yeah, we need more guys like those 6 guys.
Interesting. Well, I can't find my other notes. I don't know what I did with them. So I'm just gonna
Wrap it up, B.
freestyle. But where was I?
Well, you
So
said this-
basically, I was gonna talk about the more current, what you were just referring to. So of course, during this genocide that's been going on, there's been a lot of back and forth between Iran and Israel. As you mentioned, they assassinated Hassan Nasrallah, who was the leader of Hezbollah.
Yes.
And they also assassinated, I forget his name, but he was a Hamas leader in Iran.
Yes, that's okay. That was another big thing. They did it in Iran.
Yeah, it was in Iran. And then they bombed an Iranian consulate in Syria. Iran ended up responding. They sent a bunch of drones and missiles, which did make impact on Israel, and I think it was the first time that
They got
had happened.
touched.
Yeah. So that was a major operation. I forgot the name of the operation. I think it was True Promise, Operation True Promise. So,
That sounds right.
So that kind of takes us up.
Operation True Promise 2. I don't know what the first one was. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So that's takes us to, what's been going on more recently in Iran. Now, I did want to talk about Russia as well briefly.
Right.
I'm just going to touch on Russian history quickly. I'm going to try to go through this one fast.
Speed run.
So 1990s, early 90s, there's the end of the Soviet Union. We have the collapse of the Soviet Union. There is shock therapy, which is,
Shock doctrine.
yes, shout out to Naomi Klein, who wrote the book Shock Doctrine. But there's a lot of financial restrictions and liberalization forced on the former Soviet bloc and Russia, causes a lot of poverty, life expectancy declines, etc. All the normal neoliberal stuff that you would expect. They cut, social programs across the board.
Privatize it.
This is also what forms the oligarchs, because a lot of these former state assets are sold off.
Like the steel, because the main oligarchs are like steel people and like that type of assets that used to be, yes.
And gas and oil.
Gas and oil. Yeah. They used to be run by the government.
Right.
So good job, neoliberals.
So
Killed Clinton.
So this is what basically causes or creates the oligarchs. Then we get NATO expansion. Despite promising Gorbachev, NATO expanded eastward under Clinton and Bush. Russia protested, but they lacked the leverage to stop it. Putin comes to power in the early 2000s. Just a side note, Putin was under Yeltsin. Whenever
Boris Yeltsin.
Who was the president,
Big old liver spot.
of Russia, who basically he was one of the major players in the dissolution.
He had the famous meeting with Reagan about, was it Reagan? Yeah, pretty sure. About opening up
It probably would have been the
Russia.
Bush. Bush was
Let me check.
president when it was dissolved. But anyway, Putin was sort of that political milieu. He was had a lot of the same political ties as Yeltsin. After Yeltsin is ousted from power, I don't know if he was ousted, but marginalized. He was a drunk, not a very good leader.
Yes,
Putin comes to power in the early 2000s. He actually initially makes some overtures to the West and NATO. He wanted to join NATO. He was, basically ignored. I think he even suggested maybe just creating some new security agreements with the West. Ignored, rebuffed. So NATO continued to expand. Obviously, they weren't fans of this. And just to be clear, nobody was fan. This isn't just a Putin thing. Anybody who is in any position of political power in Russia was opposed, including Yeltsin, to the expansion of NATO. So NATO continues to expand. 2008, there's a security conference where the Bush administration entertains Ukraine and Georgia joining NATO. This is like a red line. There's a famous memo from Bill Burns, I think his name is. At the time, he was the ambassador to Russia. And the only reason we know about this memo is because of WikiLeaks. But basically, he sent a memo to the State Department, I think it was to Condoleezza Rice, saying that this is a red line for Russia. NATO expansion in Georgia and Ukraine is an absolute red line. And it's not a Putin thing. The entire Russian political class is against this.
Mm-hmm. This isn't a dictator thing.
Right. That's, we like to portray Putin as some dictator who doesn't have any constituency, that there isn't any other players in China, in Russia who have influence. No. Does he have some authoritarian tendencies? Sure, I would say not any more than any other league. He's not uniquely authoritarian. The United States is authoritarian in a lot of ways. We've had two Bushes as president.
Yeah.
We've had two Clintons, one for president, one was president. I mean, we got our own issues.
We have political dynasties.
Right.
And the person I was thinking of fucking Gorbachev, not Yeltsin. That's why I was getting confused. And Gorbachev is the one with the liver spot. But
right.
Gorbachev was also against NATO expansion. And actually, in 2016, he said NATO has begun preparations for escalating from the Cold War into a hot one. So
Gorbachev said that?
Yeah, in 2016. So again, this isn't some fucking Putin just deciding arbitrarily or like fuck the West. No.
Right.
No.
Not at all. So this memo, a famous memo, was sent to the State Department. Basically, was also ignored. In 2008, there's a war in Georgia between Georgia and Russia. Georgia's pro-Western leader, Mikhail, I'm not going to even try to say his name. I will try to say it.
You can do it.
Saakashvili.
Saakashvili.
Yeah, right.
Saakashvili.
He attempted to retake a breakaway region in South Ossetia. Russia intervened militarily after Georgian shelling of the civilians and Russian peacekeepers. Sound familiar? This is basically what happened in Ukraine. It was a red line moment. Russia was signaling it would push back on NATO's encroachment. So, again, we knew the red lines. We ignored them. We saw what Russia's response was in Georgia. Anybody who knew any of this history would have known from a mile away what would happen in Ukraine. So fast forward, 2014, there's a coup. Backed by the United States, we oust Viktor Yanukovych. We don't oust him directly, but we support some of these right-wing forces in Ukraine who ended up ousting him. there is a Russia response.
Azov Battalion.
Yeah, it was Azov Battalion, the Reich sector.
Yeah, my bad. It's those are the ones. I'm trying. What are those Nazis in Ukraine called? Yeah.
just Ukrainian nationalists.
Mm-hmm.
They had like ties to Stefan Bandera, who was like a Nazi collaborator. Like they think he's a great guy.
I remember watching some documentary clips about him. But go ahead.
Yeah, so that tells you where their political affiliations are. But anyway, Viktor Yanukovych was ousted. And Viktor Yanukovych was kind of seen as a middle of the road. He, probably corrupt, like most of these leaders are, but he tried to have sort of an independent policy. He wanted to have good relations with the EU and with Russia, but that, we make people pick sides. So if you're not on our side, you're against us.
Can't be non-aligned.
Exactly. So he was ousted.
Playing both sides. That's that shit I don't like.
Once he was ousted, Russia basically said, all right, we see what's happening here. We're going to take Crimea. Crimea is important to Russia because that's where their Navy base is at. Also, historically, Crimea was part of the Soviet Union. It was given to Ukraine when Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union in like some sort of administrative policy. It was like a good gesture, like, hey, we're brothers, we'll let you guys have Ukraine, but we also, we're going to leave our base here.
Crimea.
Crimea. Yeah. I mean, we'll let Crimea be part of Ukraine.
Just real quick, I will, at least this is from the Western narrative, is that Ukraine was constantly exploited by the Soviet Union. Moscow was taking all of the resources from, because Ukraine's like the breadbasket of Europe or something. They call it that. There's a lot of wheat in Ukraine. There's a lot of resources in Ukraine, and people, what the Western narrative is that Ukraine was always exploited by the Soviet Union. They never liked the fucking Soviets or Russia. That's why they're fighting so hard and yada, yada, yada. But even if it was, I don't know if it's true, but like I don't know. I just wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there are a lot of people in Ukraine who don't like Russians, but
there's also
a lot of people in Ukraine who do like the Russians. So
love Russia.
It's like any
Got
other
family
country.
in
There's
Russia.
it's not a monolith. There's
No.
it's like the North and the South in the United States, or East and West. Like there's different regions, different cultural practices, all
pockets,
that. So complicated, but nonetheless, so that happened. Russia takes Crimea back. It's important. There's a base there. It's on the water. They didn't want NATO having one of their bases that's on the water.
Look, we
obviously.
almost fucking went to nuclear war over Russia trying to put some shit in Cuba. So again, if we're allowed to overreact like that, we want to do the same thing on their doorstep, and they're like, why won't you let us do that? I don't understand.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I was saying, this is something that was completely predictable. You interfere in the politics on any major country's borders, they're not going to just sit idly by and let another country do that without doing anything. So This is completely predictable, and this is why there was memos, and if we were paying attention, we would have known what was going to happen. But nonetheless, there was agreements in 2014, 2015. They tried to they were called the Minsk agreements. They tried to find some political and diplomatic resolution to the fighting. Well, I didn't really outline that, but this basically sparked a civil war after the coup. East Ukraine, which is all mostly Russian speaking, more culturally Russian. Parts of East Ukraine in the Donbass, which
the Donbass region.
A lot of people have probably heard the Donbass, but that's East Ukraine. And there was a couple of provinces, Lunetsk, and there's another one I can't remember.
Is it I thought it was Lunsk. I don't know, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, I think it's pronounced like Lunetsk.
Lunetsk,
but
okay.
And there's another one I can't think of right now. But they wanted independence because they didn't want to be a part of this new right-wing government that, sort of sees the eastern part of Ukraine as like more Russian and more Slavic, and they're like more, Western Europeanized. They think they're better than Eastern Ukraine or
Right.
Eastern Ukrainians essentially, and they wanted to like outlaw Russian language and etc.
Right.
So they
That language thing is a trick by colonizers. That's what's important in Ireland to keep the native language alive. But yeah.
Yeah, so they definitely were on some. We're gonna repress Eastern Ukraine now that we're in power, or now that we have some power. And this sparked the civil war. So they had been fighting back and forth, but they wanted to come to some agreement. And Germany and France played a role in these Minsk agreements in 2014 and 2015. These agreements were basically supposed to give the Donbass some political autonomy. However, they basically ignored these agreements, and this is ultimately what led to, and the fighting continued. I should mention, Obama actually had stopped weapons, lethal weapons, being sent over to Ukraine, but Trump came to power and lifted the ban on lethal weapons being sent to Ukraine. Actually, so for a lot of people who like to say, "Oh, well, Trump is some, Russian puppet," and
Right.
he actually armed Ukraine more than Obama did. So just to be clear, to fight against Russia. So this fighting continued to go on, and fast forward to 2022, the fighting had been going on for a while. Russia's helping some. I think they're providing some, military aid to Eastern Ukrainians, but they can see what's happening. Basically, the West is flooding weapons into Ukraine. If they don't get involved, it's going to be a NATO outpost. That's how they view it.
Yeah.
And they don't want NATO on their border, one of their larger borders. I think it's like a 2,000 kilometer border. So they decide to invade. All right. So that takes us into 2022. Once they invade, there's sanctions placed on Russia. They are cut off from the SWIFT system, which is the interbank messaging system. They have over $300 billion of their Russian and central bank reserve confiscated as well. We did the same thing with Iran. Western nations also sanctioned energy, banned tech exports, restricted shipping and insurance, and seized assets like oligarch-owned yachts. So we confiscated a lot of their assets. During the Biden administration, we supplied them with tanks, F-16s, HIMARS. We greenlit Ukrainian cross-border strikes, including the Kerch Strait Bridge, which was recently bombed. And the United States and NATO have basically been conducting this war. It's a proxy war in like the most literal sense. Like, we're providing all the intelligence and weapons and everything. It's our war, more or less.
Yep. We use their bodies.
Exactly. Fight to the last Ukrainian.
Yeah.
So I did want to talk about the most recent attacks. So there have been peace talks recently. Trump came back into power. He said he was going to end the war in one day.
Did it. Knocked it out. It's over, right?
As soon as he's elected, it's over, guys.
He was going to do a lot in that first day, bro. I remember that shit.
Yeah, he had a lot of things he's going to knock out in that first day.
Oops.
Well, spoiler alert, he did not end the war in one day.
What's the Arrested Development thing? Like, they have like the voiceover. That did not happen or whatever.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Trump did not end the war in one day.
But he has started peace negotiations again, which he's been getting a lot of criticism for it by the liberal establishment. Again, their whole narrative is that he loves Putin and he admires Putin so much, and that he just wants to be friends and hang out with Putin.
Putin's got blackmail on him. They pissed on the bed and golden showers and
Yeah,
shit.
that was bullshit.
Was it?
Yeah, that was bullshit. That was some Clinton liberal State Department bullshit. Mueller report didn't produce anything. It was all a
What?
lie.
The Mueller report, the smoking gun?
Yeah, none of that shit was true. We were lied to. But basically, Trump had before he got elected, he said clearly that he wanted to try to break away Russia from China. So sort of the impetus for them having these negotiations is that they think that maybe they can have a deal with Russia in an effort to isolate China.
Part
However,
of the deal.
there has been no signs that that's going to work. The war has continued to escalate. Recently, Ukraine had an operation where they bombed the Kerch Bridge. They also bombed some planes that were like deep into Russian territory using drones.
That was a wild drone strike.
They also bombed like some railway lines or railway bridges. And Russia already responded. I think they
It's the Lawrence of Arabia tactic. Take out the railways.
What is that?
Lawrence of Arabia, that's how he
Is that a
fought.
movie?
No, it's a person.
Lawrence
I mean,
of
it is a
Arabia.
movie too. There was like a white guy who helped. Man, I hope this is right. From what I understand in popular culture, he helped the Arabians. I don't know what the fuck that was, against the British colonizers.
Right.
And the main thing he did was blow up their railways, because that's how you stop them from moving shit and supplying their outposts and yada yada yada.
Oh, okay.
Like that's like a main tactic. Taking out bridges and like supply lines.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So there were talks in Istanbul in Turkey lately, recently. Russia wants recognition of Crimea and Donbass. Ukraine demands 1991 borders. Russian hardliners nicknamed the Oreshniks push for total military victory. There's been new mobilization of 300,000 plus troops, and strikes on Ukraine's energy grid suggest Moscow is preparing for long-term escalation. So some people say that Ukraine did these strikes because the peace talks were going on and they wanted to sort of thwart them. There's a lot of people who want the war to continue, unfortunately.
But all right, because this is the thing. Ukraine, if they wanted to thwart these peace talks, it would be because these peace talks are not favorable to Ukraine as long as Russia agrees to alienate China, right? So that would be the argument as to why they did the drone strikes now, to sabotage the peace talks, because Ukraine's not in control, right? If this is really a proxy war, these peace talks, whatever the fucking U.S. decides, if they made that deal, like Russia, like we're going to end this war, you're going to alienate China, as part of that, you're going to get all of this shit, like the Donbass region, the Crimea, you're going to get, whereas Ukraine's like, we're not giving up shit. Any peace talks, we get all our stuff back. But if the U.S. decides, like, no, you don't. No, they don't, right?
Yeah, I mean, they can't do it without U.S. support.
That's what I mean. We pull our support. Then, like,
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the play, and this is just conjecture, is like there's a sort of a media PR play that they want to seem like they are still fighting and winning to some extent. So these attacks are sort of to say, hey, look at us. We're still
Gotcha.
fighting this war. We still can do damage. Continue to fund us.
Give us some more.
To support us. And so I think it's really an effort to undermine peace talks. That's what I think is going on here.
No, it makes. I was just trying to figure out like why would they want to undermine the peace talks?
Right.
Well, it's because the peace talks aren't going to be favorable to Ukraine, even though it should be them negotiating the peace talks.
Right.
They're not really in charge here.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, look, Russia's already made it very clear. They're not giving the Donbass.
Look, this war is over. Like, how long it takes is whatever.
Right. Crimea, gone. Never going back.
Nope.
The Donbass, gone. I mean, those are non-negotiable as far as Russia's. Like,
Yeah. You're lucky you're letting the rest of your asses stay there.
so those are basically parts of Russia now as far as they're concerned. Most of the negotiations are going to be around like basically what Ukraine, how it can function as a new country, like what kind of security agreements are going to be in place. Like Russia wants some guarantees that like they're not going to be weaponized against Russia.
Yeah, to try this shit again in
Right.
5-10 years.
Right.
Yeah.
That's basically what Russia is looking to negotiate. Outside of that, there's really nothing that Russia's going to talk about, and this war is probably going to continue to go on, because the Trump administration, for one, I don't think they have the diplomatic, expertise or
No, they don't.
savvy to
Really?
to actually
Jared
negotiate.
Kushner? Did you put Jared Kushner on this yet?
Pete Hegseth.
Hegseth? You
I
sure?
don't think they have, what it takes to actually negotiate anything that would.
Fuck no.
But also, I should just say, it's not just them. The liberal establishment is very hostile to ending this war. I mean, Biden escalated
Democrats.
the war. The Democrats, they wanted this war as much as anybody, and they in the media as well. The mainstream media has done everything that it can to make Trump seem as if he is some puppet or friend of Putin, and that's why he wants to end the war. The thing is, the war needs to end because we want people to stop dying, obviously.
Well, it's this weird area that we're in now because a lot of Trump and MAGA is trying to reel in fucking America first type shit. Stop focusing so much on other countries, even though it's a dumbass idea because the reason we're focused on those other countries is to put America first.
Right.
But Democrats are like, no, we're focused on those other countries because we're quote unquote spreading democracy, which is really just supporting Western hegemony because like that's what brings peace to the world.
Right.
So yeah, the Democrats, again, another example why I hate them more. They're not upfront with you. Like, yeah, fuck them.
Yeah. So, and then also I wanted to talk about this briefly. So while all this is going on, these peace talks to try to end this war in Ukraine, while simultaneously the war is kind of being escalated. There's also been talks with Iran about their nuclear enrichment. Iran maintains it has a right to, under the NPT, to enrich uranium peacefully. U.S. wants Iran to end enrichment and stop supporting Hezbollah and the Houthis. So this is what these talks have been around. Essentially, the U.S. wants Iran to abandon its resistance support for Hezbollah, Houthis, and any other resistance movements. There's some in Iraq as well, and there were some in Syria. Mm-hmm. I don't know to what extent now. Iran probably isn't going to do that. They also want them not. I've read some things that said they want them to end enrichment altogether.
Yeah.
That is not going to happen.
No, but again, this is what I'm saying. They want them to end enrichment altogether because eventually, once you hit whatever that fucking magic number is, and you can use it for nuclear energy, you can also use it for making a bomb. So that like the possibility that they just maybe decide to switch, throw everything away, nuke Israel, even though that's like pretty far out there, especially what we've seen in even the attacks on Israel after their own people were killed in Syria. They did an attack on Israel where they told everybody it was about to happen like they don't want to fucking go scorched earth, which is what all of this is, I guess, based upon. Oh, they have a radical fundamentalist or Islamic regime. They can't be trusted. Even though they say they want to use it for nuclear energy, they might just say, fuck it, let's wipe Israel off the map tomorrow and throw our lives away. That's the whole justification as to why they can't. They have a nuclear program. We're afraid of what, I don't know, some suicidal thing that they might do.
That's not even it. The whole reason they don't want them to have a nuclear program is because we want to be able to bomb them when we want to. That's really what it comes down to. If we want to take out Iran, we want to be able to do it when we want to. That's why we don't want other countries to have nuclear weapons. Not because we don't think they're irresponsible. They're not responsible countries, or
But why are they even in the conversation? Why we want to take them out? If we want to take them out, it's because Israel has escalated this shit to a point that we have to now take them out for Israel.
I mean, Israel's definitely escalated it, but I mean, this is American foreign policy. We don't want anybody to be able to defend themselves. We want everybody to be subordinate to United States interests.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, I guess what you're saying. I agree with all that, but I'm just saying the propaganda, the way it's sold to America, is why Iran cannot have nukes.
Yeah.
They just can't be trusted.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's certainly how it's sold.
I'm sorry. The Democrats, okay, this is from a Democratic perspective. They just can't be trusted.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talks about, and also I should mention, Iran wanted Iran to stop enrichment. Iran basically said, look, we're willing to negotiate, curbing enrichment, but you guys have to lift the sanctions first. So this has kind of been the gridlock.
Right.
There hasn't been a whole lot of movement because Iran, for one, has no reason to trust the United States. Obama did not fully comply with his own JCPOA, and then Trump ripped it up and withdrew from it. Now, the same administration is saying, okay, let's negotiate again after you destroyed the previous agreement. So Iran has basically said, look, we're not going to unilaterally just give you guys things. If you want to have a real conversation about us, having some sort of peaceful nuclear program as you see it, we think it's peaceful already, but if you want to, want us to comply with what
allow
you guys,
UN inspectors to come check our shit out,
all that, which they think is like, spying basically,
bro. It is.
Which you can make an argument that it is.
Do we let China come check out our shit?
No.
Hey, Russia, come check out our nukes. Is it cool?
I mean, they're supposed to be independent institutions, whatever.
Yeah,
but,
of course.
But basically, Iran said, like, we're not playing this game no more. You guys gotta do something first to show, that you're operating in good faith, essentially. And we want the sanctions removed, and they're not doing it. So this is just another gridlock here. You got Iran. And the whole point of me going through this is that these things are going on simultaneously. You got Iran and Russia right now, who are both important players in the BRICS, right? They both have partnered. They recently, just at the beginning of this year, signed a defense agreement with one another. And you have the United States, a declining empire, trying to negotiate on two fronts on how to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, and also trying to end a war that it helped start in Ukraine. And it's failing on both fronts. And I think this is just a clear example of just waning American influence and power in the world. And I don't see any path where any of these things are going to be resolved. Like, it's very possible that, we do go to war with Iran because Israel, of course, wants to undermine any agreements that we have with that we may have potentially with Iran, and they're talking about bombing Iran again. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch, and I think this is a good example of how the American empire just doesn't have the gusto that it
They
does.
got the juice.
He ain't got the juice like it used to have. It's running into a lot of dead ends, and for all the sort of grandstanding that you see Trump do on TV, he just had that call with Xi Jinping the other day, and he had to call Xi. They finally broke down and called.
He'll call me. Fuck that
You're
shit.
right. They're like, no, y'all call China. China's still withholding, rare earths. It's like they're not playing these games with y'all no more. They're like,
Wait a minute. You mean the art of the deal? That's not a good idea. That doesn't work. What?
but just not even just the art of the deal. I'm just the U.S. empire. They're like,
Well, the U.S. empire was essentially the art of the deal. Hey, we have leverage over you. We have the juice.
Right.
Now these other countries have a little bit of juice, have enough juice. They're like, you know what? Fuck your juice.
Right. You know what?
Looks like
I
your
haven't read
juice
the
is
art of the deal,
leaking.
but you're probably right. U.S. foreign policy is probably very art of the deal aligned.
But it's because it's not a real thing. Like the art of the deal is not like, hey, let's make a good deal that's good for both sides. It's like, how can I make a deal that fucks you and like prioritizes what I get back on it? And the best way to do that? Some kind of leverage. How do you get that leverage? Here's a bunch of ways. A lot of them are fucked up. That's the art of the deal. That's America.
Yeah.
That's colonialism. That's the British Empire. That's just all of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Forest for the trees, baby.
And also, I'm wrapping up, but I did want to read this.
Yeah, we about to hit the limit, actually.
Oh, where we at right now?
1 hour and 52 minutes.
Damn.
Yeah, you went a little crazy.
You went crazy.
No, I only did 30 minutes, bro.
Yeah, but you talked all through my segments.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
But all right. This is from Brzezinski. Potentially the most dangerous scenario would be a grand coalition of China, Russia, and perhaps Iran, an anti-hegemonic coalition united not by ideology but by complementary grievances. It would be reminiscent in scale and scope of the challenge once posed by the Sino-Soviet bloc, though this time China would likely be the leader and Russia the follower. Averting this contingency, however remote it may be, will require a display of U.S. geostrategic skill on the western, eastern, and southern perimeters of Eurasia simultaneously. So that was Brzezinski. He wrote that in the Grand Chessboard in 1996 or 97. So completely foresaw this. This is why Trump, and this is something that was kind of understood in the national security state establishment, right? Is that this was a possibility. This is why Trump said during his campaign that he needs to unite China and Russia. Like, he didn't come up with that on his own. Somebody told him that. But they're failing. What's the point is it of this segment is they're failing on all fronts. These countries are closer than they've ever been, and this is just more. This is just indicative of the continued decline of U.S. power.
For sure.
All right, that's all I got. Sorry, I did go long.
No,
I
you
knew
good.
I
was wondering how you're going to tie the two things together.
Yeah, I was trying. Yeah, that's where I was going with it. I was trying to tie those two.
Nah, it makes sense, though.
Yeah,
The way you did
because
it, yeah.
both things are going on simultaneously. So,
And they're two examples that highlight.
right.
Yeah. Well, shit, man. That was good. I did the opposite of what I said I was gonna do. I didn't really take any notes. Oh, Stuxnet. I did this is the one though because I just wanted to say this. This is me holding back and not interrupting. You said Stuxnet.
Yeah.
You know, like that virus because the nuclear program, Iranian's nuclear program is like what's it called? Air gapped. It's not connected to the internet. The only way that they were able to get that is they had somebody on the inside fucking plug in a USB.
Oh shit.
And that fucking like that set them back I don't know 5-10 years.
Right.
It's fucked up. That's crazy. I don't know Because I don't know, you think we hit them with a virus. It's like, oh yeah, we just cybersecurity attack, whatever. I guess it is that, but like, no, we had to have somebody in there. And that's the thing. We're killing, or Israel is killing, like their scientists. Like their nuclear scientists are murdered.
Yeah.
And then we fucking send somebody into their facility with a USB and like, got your shit. Like, yeah, this isn't, I don't know, some passive online war.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. It's air gapped their
bro.
facility, so
I've
somebody
been
had to
thinking
go in
about
there.
air gapping stuff a lot recently.
Yeah, the only reason I even know that term is because I took the Security Plus.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, this is good shit. Any last words before I drop in this outro?
Nah, man. Keep finding a good fight out there. Shout out to my people in LA, man. Y'all stay in the streets.
Yes, I feel like I want to look into that for sure. In the next week's episode, we decided we're gonna do like more of a news, just going through news and what's going on. So we didn't get to that in this episode, but we're definitely
Trending topics.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much shit constantly, but this LA shit really might be, I don't know, might be a turning point. I know I say that shit, but like, if the Marines have never been deployed before, they're being deployed right now. It's pretty wild. Against American citizens, that is. That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
All right. Power to the people.
No way to be committed to nonviolence in the middle of the most violent society that history's ever created. I'm not committed to nonviolence in any way.
The Republican Party and the Democratic Party are beholden to the interests of monopoly capitalism in this country.
The capitalist European and North American powers have carved out and taken the timber, the flax, the hemp, the cocoa, the rum, the tin, the cotton, the iron, the rubber, the bauxite, the slaves, and the cheap labor. They have taken out of these countries. These countries are not underdeveloped, they're overexploited.
Liberals are, at times, allies. At times, they're unreliable allies. So I don't want to just whitewash them. You've got to proceed quite cautiously with liberals.
The man or woman who knows the least about communism is the man or woman who wants to know the least about communism. That is to say, snakes are my enemies. They come to bite me, and I don't even want to know what they look like.
What's happening here for the last 4 years? Brutality, humiliation, our basic human rights taken away from us. All of this has to come to an end through talking.